Thanks for tuning in to the R Lads Football Network ProLine TV. What we're going to do is we're going to go over the scenarios and let you know, uh, because there's probably about 15, 12, now, I don't know if that much, maybe 10 to 15 different scenarios, depending on who wins, who loses. So I'm just going over the big ones. So let's start first of all with a simple one, and that is Georgia winning the SEC. Now, what we're doing here too is we're going to break this down based on not what I think, but what should happen. Favorites winning the games, okay, that sort of thing. And if that happens, so let's, for instance, start off here. I believe that whoever loses the Big Ten championship game will not drop very far. So I have the Big Ten loser, albeit Indiana, Ohio State, at 3. And it's pretty easy to deduce this in my mind, and that is, with both teams undefeated, whoever loses, their only loss will be against a top team, a top 1, 2, 3 team, and they just can't drop. So there you go. That's why I think it's pretty easy for me to think that's how it's going to go. So, and if Georgia wins, then you obviously have to move Georgia up a little bit, a couple spots, and put them at 2 if they win the SEC championship game. Let's see. Let me see if I could pop up. Let me see. Let me take, do it here easily. Let me see if I could, last week's ranking, so I can just show you a little bit of a little bit of what we're talking about. All right. So this is Ohio. So you got Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia. Okay. So again, you can't drop either one of these teams very far undefeated. So if they lose to a number 1 team or a number 2 team, where are you going to go? Number 3. That's where I have them. All right. So here's Georgia at 4. So if Georgia wins, well, they're definitely going to move. Well, again, Texas A&M has lost now, so they're going to move ahead of Texas A&M. They might have already been ranked ahead of Texas A&M going into the game. They probably will be. And then Georgia will slip into this role here. No way do I see the loser. I shouldn't say no way, but I just can't see. I think Ohio State has the better chance that if they were to lose to Indiana, last-second field goal, whatever the case, a very close game, it's possible Ohio State can end up number 2. But I'm going to say, because it's the SEC, because both teams will have a loss, that they'll move Georgia up to 2. And then just move down even if it's Indiana, just move them down 1 spot to 3. All right, so that's how that looks there. And you can see how it looks here. Now let's take a look at what I have. So Texas A&M, they're not going to drop that far at all. They lost 1 game, and they lost to Texas. So it's not a bad loss. So I don't see any reason to drop them further down. Texas Tech, meanwhile, same thing. Again, we're basing this on Texas Tech winning. They're heavy favorite. So let's say they win. Well, they're not dropping, but they can't really move up. They're not going to move ahead of any of these teams because, again, where you see where they are right now, okay, they're 5, and I still keep them behind all 4 of these teams, okay? Because, yeah, I think that's pretty easy to conclude. All right. So then, same thing. Oregon, they're not playing, so they just move up a little bit. Same thing with Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Notre Dame. All right. So now you've got the situation here, and this is the deal for Miami fans. So it's pretty simple. I don't know what everybody, again, I have no idea what the analysts are saying. That's the one thing I did not do research-wise. I don't want to know what anybody thinks. This is just my research today, all the research I did, and this is what I believe. And that is that I didn't say all, but Miami has 1 shot at this. 1. They need Alabama to lose. That's it. It's very simple. Alabama loses, Miami in. Okay? And then you've got Virginia and the AAC winner. So again, if Virginia's the favorite, they win that. Texas Tech is the favorite, they win that. A lot of these teams aren't playing, and there you go. Pretty simple. The American team is definitely going to be the group of 5 team there, and I think that's like the easiest scenario based on no big upsets from the top teams. Okay. Now let's take a look at the bracket. Under that scenario number 1, this is what the bracket would look like. Okay, so you would have Ohio State 1, and Ohio State would be taking on the winner of Oklahoma and Notre Dame. And, this is one of those situations kind of similar like last year with Oregon, and they had to play Ohio State. Now, that was a little bit different because of just actually, not that it was different because I forget where Oregon was. But anyway, the fact is that it's like Ohio State's probably saying to themselves, if this happens, because this can definitely happen. I just showed you the scenarios that if there were no big upsets, this could happen. You could have Ohio State playing Notre Dame with their first playoff game. Probably going, really? Notre Dame? But the good thing about this year is that even if you're a really good team like Ohio State, Indiana, that kind of stuff, nobody is really going to be that shocked by any. There might be a surprise, like let's say if Virginia were to beat Oregon, that would be considered a surprise just looking at this. Or obviously, if you've got an American team beating Texas Tech, that would be a surprise. That would be the biggest one here. So, and while that would be a surprise, still, I just don't look at that as I am absolutely shocked that happened. But yeah, those would be it. That's it. You have a couple of surprises, and that would be it for the entire tournament. Any other team beats any other team. It's like, okay, it's an upset, but are you really surprised? I don't think so. Georgia, number 2, would play the winner of Ole Miss and Miami. I don't think anybody wants to see a Georgia-Ole Miss rematch. Indiana would play the winner of Oregon and Virginia. And Texas A&M would play the winner of Texas Tech and the American winner. And I think a Texas A&M Texas Tech matchup would be pretty sweet. Let's now move on to playoff scenario number 2. And this is with Alabama beating Georgia, which I believe will happen, and Duke beating Virginia, which I do not believe will happen. But let's just say this is the big story on the weekend is Alabama, a little bit of an upset win, and Duke with a little bit of an upset win. And if everything else stays the way it is, this is how it would look. See, right there. There I've got a Big Ten loser. In this scenario, and that is because if Georgia is out, okay, you move them out, you move them down for losing, and then it becomes Texas A&M or Texas Tech. So do you put Texas A&M or Texas Tech ahead of Indiana or Ohio State? And the reason why I'm going to say they're not going to do that is because of who they lost to. Texas Tech lost to Arizona State. Texas A&M lost to Texas, good team. But Indiana, Ohio State would have lost to a 1 or 2, whatever. And so I think that would be a good scenario right there of where you could have the 2 Big Ten teams, 1 and 2. And the other reason too, I don't think they put Texas A&M ahead of the Big Ten loser is because they did not go to the SEC championship game. And then I've got Oregon. They just move up a little. And Alabama, I'm going to put Alabama. Look, I don't think this is too big of a surprise that Alabama would be here and that Georgia would have to move all the way down to 7. You're going to keep Georgia ahead of Ole Miss. And yeah, I'm going to have Alabama over Ole Miss. That's the only thing they have to look at is that, do you think that would happen? Only because I talked about this a week or two ago about how unusual it is for the committee to put a team with a better winning percentage below another team. and that does not have a better win percentage. And the reason I'm going to go for it here is because of Alabama. They're all in the same conference, but Alabama won the SEC championship game. So I think it'll be hard for the committee to put Ole Miss ahead of the SEC champion, even though they have one more loss. Now, maybe they will. So you got to keep that in mind. Okay. So when we're looking at the bracket, if you think that an Alabama win would put Ole Miss at 6, and just keep that in mind, I don't think they'll do that. And look, I even have Georgia still ahead for obvious reasons. Even though they'll have one more loss of the same thing with Alabama, they beat Ole Miss. And I think that, and they were in the championship game. So I think that'll be enough to keep them both over Ole Miss. And I think another reason too is, and they'll never admit this, but if Ole Miss was a bubble team, like a real bubble team, like let's say they lost to Mississippi State, and all of a sudden they're a bubble team. I'm telling you right now, they're not in the playoffs. The committee is definitely going to penalize Ole Miss for not having Lane Kiffin around. And you know what? In a way, I think they should. Not to say shame on you or anything like that. It's just the fact of, just like they do with players. Remember a couple of years ago, we saw what happened with Florida State. They lost their quarterback. And because of that, the committee penalized the entire program and didn't allow Florida State in the playoffs, even though they deserved it. And they would have been in the playoffs if their quarterback, Travis, would have stayed healthy. So it's the same thing. No Kiffin. So you're not going to be as good on paper. So we're going to move you down or not move you up. And then there's Oklahoma and Notre Dame. And then in this situation, okay, again, Duke beating Virginia. Now, this is important. If Duke beats Virginia, there will be no ACC representative as long as James Madison wins. And even so, I shouldn't even say that. There will be no ACC representative. Okay? Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. There would be. That's right. Because, again, this is what you have to keep in mind, is that they're going to have the top 5 conference champions are in the tournament. Okay? So we would already have the 4th, but James Madison would get in as long as they were ranked ahead of Duke. Now, the committee could just do whatever they want to do with the rankings and manipulate them, not that they'd admit it, and put Duke in. But Duke's not getting in over James Madison. There's no way. They will rank James Madison ahead of Duke. And again, we only see a top 25, so I don't know where they would have him. James Madison, for all we know, is 26. But Duke is probably 40. There is no way Duke is going to go to the tournament. They'll move James Madison in. So as we were saying before with Chesney, this is the only thing that'll be interesting to see what happens if James Madison is in the tournament, and this would be the scenario. Okay, so they would need Alabama and Duke to win. Actually, I don't know about Alabama. I don't think that's necessary, but to Duke, they need Duke to win. And if Duke beats Virginia, then James Madison. Look, you got to take care of Troy. You got to do that. But here's the thing. This is why there's very little hope for Miami, Utah. Forget Utah. After what happened on Saturday, there's no way. Vanderbilt is probably going to be ahead of Utah now. I'd be shocked if it's not Miami and Vanderbilt. Miami just ahead of Vanderbilt. And so that would be the only situation there, is that it would be if Miami is still ahead of Vanderbilt, which I think there will be, then if there was an opening and not again, we're talking about if James Madison lost to Troy, then Duke still does not get in. It would then be Miami. So this is the other way Miami can get in. But I said, look, it's Alabama because Miami's would need Troy to win. And I'm not going to say it's impossible. I've been a big Troy fan all season. So there's a lot of pressure on James Madison. So let's not completely throw that out. So just keep that in mind if you're a Miami fan. If you can root for Troy. And if Troy pulls off the upset against James Madison, the only thing is we go back to the 5 conference deal. And I mean, where would it go then? I mean, then you're talking about what would it be? Mountain West? I mean, are we really going to do that? Are there really no way to get out of that 5 automatic bid thing? And I guess there's not. So that's the thing. That's why I don't even see how Miami gets in unless it's just Alabama. I don't see it. Of all the research I did, I'm trying to even convince myself that there's got to be a way. If James Madison loses, that opens the door, right, for Miami. They said 5. And I guess that means we got to go to the Mountain West. Because we're not going to the MAC or the Conference USA. We know that. I mean, just imagine how absolutely ridiculous it would be if Boise State ended up in the playoffs again. Just imagine how embarrassing that would be. Not that they haven't done enough embarrassing things, but that would be embarrassing. I don't even want to go there. Please, if that's what it takes, please, James Madison, do not get upset by Troy. It's something that we want to see. All right, so let's take a look at the bracket now for this scenario here. And where are we? Okay, so we've got Ohio State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss in this scenario, 8 versus 9. Okay, so I think they'd be a lot happier to avoid Notre Dame. And you have Indiana, though. Maybe you have a rematch with Notre Dame. Boy, look at this first round matchup. Georgia and Notre Dame. That would be nice. That would be sweet. Texas A&M would take on the American Alabama winner. And Texas Tech would take on the Oregon James Madison winner. So that is scenario number 2 based on the rankings for that bracket. And now the final scenario, and that is if Alabama, again, we're going to go with Alabama winning the SEC and BYU winning the Big 12. Okay, so once again, we got Big 10 winner, Big 10 loser. Texas A&M is sitting at 3. Oregon now gets to move up to 4 because Texas Tech's not there. Alabama moves up, Georgia moves up, Ole Miss moves up. And there's BYU. I'm going to put BYU, and I think this is what they would do. I think they're going to put BYU ahead of Oklahoma and Notre Dame. The reason I think this is because BYU would only have, first of all, they'd only have 1 loss with Oklahoma and Notre Dame with 2. Secondly, they're a conference champion. I think they get some benefit there. Also, they only have 1 loss to Texas Tech. And that would have been a top 5 team that they would have beaten. I mean, lost to. They're only lost to a top 5 team. Okay, where if Oklahoma's got a couple losses, Notre Dame has good losses, of course. I mean, we know that. Both of those losses were good for Notre Dame, which is why I have Notre Dame in my own rankings already like 4 coming into last week. But the committee has them at 10. So, and Oklahoma is where Oklahoma is. But in my opinion, I think they moved BYU ahead of them as a conference champ of a Power 4 conference, and because their only loss was against a top 5 team. So I think they'll give them the benefit of the doubt and move them up to 8. But remember, when you take a look at the brackets, keep that in mind. If they don't respect BYU at all, then you would put them at 10. You would move Oklahoma and Notre Dame up, and you'd have BYU at 10. Okay, then we've got Virginia winning and AAC winner again. So this is just based on two key things: Alabama beating Georgia and BYU beating Texas Tech. And yes, Texas Tech out. So if you're a Texas Tech fan, I don't see at all how you would be able to survive. Now, I think that there would be some people who would want a debate with Oklahoma, Notre Dame, but I don't think you're going to get it because you would have lost. Because the Arizona State loss is going to kill Texas Tech, and it shouldn't, but it will. Arizona State, you can't compare that loss to these other teams. You just can't. And so there you go. Unfortunately, Texas Tech loses. They're not even going to be in the playoffs. That's how important that game is. We all know that this year is I don't know. Last year we didn't have the example because we're only talking about a couple of teams, but this year I'm going to keep saying this for a while. I mean, you can if you just look at the when it's all said and done, you look at the top 5 teams, say, that did not get in. I'm telling you, if you look at those teams and look at the last 5 that made it in, you're not going to see a difference at all. You're going to see any of those teams would be equally capable of beating. Just take a look at Vandy and Utah as examples, and Texas. So, all right. So there you go. So that would be the scenarios. Those would be the bracket. Oh, let me put the brackets up. Okay. So in scenario number 3, you have Ohio State against BYU Oklahoma. Now, this looks a lot better for Ohio State. Now, this is what Ohio State's rooting for. And again, remember, I have been putting Ohio State ahead of Indiana in all these, but that's just based on them being the favorite. So let's say it's Ohio State wins the Big Ten, and out of all these scenarios, this is the one you can betcha that they are zeroed in on. Is come on, more importantly. Again, I'm not sure the Alabama Georgia thing matters here, based on where they are at 8-9. But and look, maybe BYU is 10 and not 8. And in that scenario, maybe Notre Dame is the one that's up there, and then Ohio State's in trouble. But this would be the best case scenario if you're an Ohio State fan, is rooting for a BYU upset, and maybe Ohio State could play potentially Oklahoma or BYU in their first round matchup. And then there's Indiana, once again, potential Notre Dame matchup, and Oregon could get Alabama if Alabama wins in this scenario.